There are times in life when it feels like everything is standing still. You've prayed, you've trusted, and you've done all you know to do, yet nothing seems to be happening. The silence can feel overwhelming, and you might begin to wonder, God, where are you? But let me reassure you today, just because you can't see God moving doesn't mean he isn't working. Behind every moment of silence, every closed door, and every delay, God is orchestrating things for your good. Even when you can't see it, he's working behind the scenes, and when the time is right, his plan will unfold in ways that exceed your wildest expectations. So don't lose heart. Trust that God is at work, even when it's not visible. It's easy to become discouraged when life doesn't go as planned. We live in a world that values instant results, but God's timing operates on a different level. He's not just concerned with your immediate desires. He's focused on the bigger picture. While you're waiting, God is moving in the background, aligning people, circumstances, and opportunities that you can't even see yet. He's setting the stage for a breakthrough that is beyond anything you could have imagined. The waiting is not wasted. God is working in ways that are hidden, but he is always on time. Think about the story of Joseph in the Bible. He spent years in prison, forgotten by those he had helped, and it must have felt like God had abandoned him, but God was working behind the scenes all along. While Joseph was in the pit and in prison, God was positioning him for the palace. In just one moment, God turned Joseph's situation around and elevated him to a position of power. What looked like a dead end was actually God's preparation for something far greater. The same is true for you. God's silence doesn't mean his absence. He's preparing something incredible for you, even if you can't see it right now. Sometimes we're so focused on the closed doors that we miss the bigger story God is writing behind them. A delay doesn't mean denial. What if the reason God is holding something back is because he's making room for something better? It's easy to become frustrated when things don't happen according to our plans, but God's plans are always higher and better. Isaiah 55:9 tells us, "As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than the earth. So are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." While you're waiting, God is rearranging things to make sure his perfect will comes to pass. There's power in trusting the unseen. Faith isn't just believing in what you can see. It's believing that God is working even when you can't. Hebrews 11:1 reminds us that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. When you're in a season of waiting, hold on to that faith. Trust that God is doing things behind the scenes that you can't comprehend. He's positioning you, refining you, and strengthening you for what's coming. Don't let the lack of visible progress cause you to lose hope. Faith sees beyond the physical and trusts in the spiritual. One of the hardest things to do in a season of waiting is to be still. We want to move, to fix, to make things happen. But sometimes God calls us to a season of stillness, not because he isn't working, but because he's doing something within us. Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still, and know that I am God." In the stillness, God is often doing his greatest work. He's shaping your character, building your resilience, and preparing you for the blessings that are coming. The work that God is doing behind the scenes in your heart is just as important as the work he's doing in your circumstances. When you feel like nothing is happening, remember that God works in the quiet. Look at how seeds grow. They're planted deep in the soil, hidden from sight, and yet underneath the surface, there's so much happening. Roots are being established, strength is being built, and in time, the seed will break through the ground. Your situation may feel buried, but God is growing something powerful beneath the surface. When the time is right, that breakthrough will come to fruition, and you'll realize that every moment of waiting was necessary for what's about to bloom. God is not just interested in the destination. He's invested in your journey. Every trial, every closed door, and every delay is shaping you into the person God needs you to be for the next step of your journey. It's easy to get caught up in the frustration of waiting, but God sees the bigger picture. He's developing perseverance in you, teaching you patience and refining your faith. Romans 28 reminds us that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Even the waiting is part of his plan. It's important to remember that God's timing is perfect. We may not understand it, but his timing is never late and never early. Ecclesiastes 3:11 says he has made everything beautiful in its time. If God hasn't moved yet, it's because he's making sure that when he does, it will be perfect. Sometimes the longer the wait, the greater the blessing. Trust that when God's plan unfolds, it will be far more beautiful than anything you could have orchestrated on your own. While you're waiting, don't miss what God is doing around you. Often, in our frustration, we focus so much on what isn't happening that we forget to see the blessings that are already there. God is always working, even in the small things. Take time to recognize his hand in the everyday moments. Every breath, every opportunity, every act of kindness is evidence of God's constant presence in your life. The more you focus on his faithfulness in the present, the easier it becomes to trust him with the future. There is a profound peace that comes when you trust that God is in control, even when you can't see the full picture. Philippians 4:6-7 tells us not to be anxious about anything, but to pray and present our requests to God. In return, his peace will guard our hearts and minds. When you believe that God is working behind the scenes, you can rest in that peace. You don't have to stress or worry about the outcome because the creator of the universe is working everything together for your good. The silence doesn't mean that God has forgotten you. Sometimes God works in the background because the work he's doing is too important to be rushed. Think of it like an artist carefully crafting a masterpiece. Each brushstroke may not make sense in the moment, but when the full picture is revealed, you'll understand why it took time. God is crafting something beautiful in your life, and though you can't see the final picture yet, trust that he's working with intentionality and purpose. Sometimes we look at our circumstances and feel overwhelmed by the chaos or confusion around us. It's in those moments that we must remember that God is not a God of confusion, but of order. Though life may seem disorganized or out of control, God is masterfully weaving everything together for a purpose. Just like a tapestry, when viewed from the backside, it may look like a tangled mess of threads, but when turned over, the design is breathtakingly beautiful. God is weaving together every aspect of your life into something more glorious than you can see from where you stand now. When we feel forgotten, it's easy to think that God has moved on or isn't listening. But the truth is, God is always attentive to the cries of his children. He hasn't forgotten you. Psalm 34:15 reminds us that the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous and his ears are attentive to their cry. You are never out of his sight. In fact, God is carefully working things out in ways that will surprise you, so don't mistake his patience for inaction. He's making sure that when he delivers, it will be perfect. One of the greatest challenges of faith is learning to trust the invisible. Like the wind, we may not always see where God is moving, but we can certainly feel the effects of his work. Every shift in your circumstances, every unexpected turn, and every coincidence is God aligning things in ways you might not understand right now. Trust the unseen hand of God, for just as the wind moves unseen, so does the Spirit of God, blowing exactly where it needs to go in your life. When things seem silent, consider this. God might be working on other people's hearts or circumstances to align with what he's doing for you. You may be ready, but he's preparing the way in the lives of those around you as well. That job promotion you've been waiting for, that opportunity you've been praying about, God is not only preparing you, but also preparing the hearts of others. Sometimes he's creating connections that will lead to divine appointments at just the right time. You're not just waiting for your own heart to be ready. God is preparing everything else too. It's important to understand that God's work is often slow and methodical because he's interested in producing lasting change. Instant results might satisfy for the moment, but God desires growth that stands the test of time. Think of a tree. Its roots take time to grow deep into the ground, and though you can't see it, the deeper the roots, the stronger the tree. God is establishing deep roots in your life, roots that will help you stand firm no matter what storms come your way. Don't rush the process. God is building a foundation that will hold you for a lifetime. God's work behind the scenes often comes with a refining process. The waiting and the challenges you face are not wasted. They are purifying you. Just as gold is refined in the fire to remove impurities, God is allowing the heat of life circumstances to refine your character and strengthen your faith. The end result will be pure, strong, and radiant. Trust that the refining is necessary for the blessing that's coming. You're being shaped for something much greater than you can see right now. It's easy to grow weary in the waiting, but Galatians 6:9 encourages us. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. You're closer to your breakthrough than you think. The enemy will try to convince you that nothing is happening, that you've been forgotten, and that giving up is your only option. But those are lies. The truth is, God is moving even in what seems like a dormant season. Keep sowing seeds of faith and the harvest will come. Don't give up just before the breakthrough. There's a story in the Bible about Elijah who prayed for rain during a drought. For 6 times his servant went to check the sky and each time there was nothing. But on the 7th time there was a small cloud. There was a small cloud no bigger than a man's hand. That small cloud was the beginning of a downpour that ended the drought. You may be looking for massive changes, but sometimes God's work starts small. Don't overlook the little signs that God is moving. What seems insignificant today may be the start of something life-changing tomorrow. Your prayers are never wasted. Every prayer you've whispered in faith, every tear you've cried in silence, God has heard it all. Revelation 5:8 tells us that the prayers of the saints are like incense before God. He treasures them, and He's working through every single one of them. Sometimes it may feel like your prayers are bouncing off the ceiling, but the truth is they are building up a powerful response in the heavenly realm. In God's perfect timing, those prayers will be answered in ways far beyond your expectations. When we focus on what isn't happening, we sometimes miss what God is already doing. Look around you. What are the subtle ways that God is showing up in your life? Maybe it's through a kind word from a friend, a door that didn't open because something better is on the way, or peace in the midst of uncertainty. God often works through the small, quiet moments, gently guiding you in ways you may not recognize until later. Pay attention to the seemingly small blessings. They're often the precursors to something far greater. Remember that God's plans for you are always good. Jeremiah 29:11 promises that God has plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Even when life feels uncertain, God's plans are not. He sees the end from the beginning and He is guiding you toward a future that is filled with hope. Trust that His plans are worth the wait. When His work behind the scenes is fully revealed, you'll understand why certain things didn't happen the way you expected, and you'll see that His way was perfect all along. Finally, take comfort in knowing that God is never idle. Even when you can't see or feel it, He is always at work. Jesus said in John 5:17, "My Father is always at His work to this very day, and I too am working." Just as the earth continues to spin, even when we don't feel it, God's plan continues to unfold whether we see it or not. The pieces are coming together, and in His timing, the full picture will emerge, more beautiful and fulfilling than anything you could have imagined. As we walk through life, it's natural to feel discouraged when we don't see immediate results. But remember this, just because you can't see God working doesn't mean He's not moving. He is in ways you can't imagine. Every silent moment, every closed door, every delay is part of His divine plan to bring about something far greater than you ever dreamed. Trust in the unseen, knowing that God is always working behind the scenes for your good. Even in the stillness, He is preparing something beautiful, and when the time is right, He will reveal it. Keep your faith alive, keep your faith alive, keep your heart open, and trust that God's timing is perfect. Your breakthrough is closer than you think. Thank you so much for watching. If this message resonated with you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiration and encouragement. Remember, God is working behind the scenes even when you can't see it. Stay encouraged. Stay faithful and trust that His plan for you is greater than you can imagine. Until next time, may God bless you and keep you strong in your journey. Stay tuned because amazing things are on the horizon.